The last 48 hours have shown that the situation in the city of Johannesburg remains volatile and unstable. What is currently happening in South Africa's biggest city is a case study in what happens in the absence of good faith and properly negotiated cooperation agreements between different parties. The situation in Johannesburg demonstrates that the National Convention for the Moonshot Pact proposed by the DA has never been more urgent. I'd like to provide an update on how we got here and explain how the Moonshot Pact can get coalitions moving forward again. The process that has led to the deadlock in Johannesburg is a clear template for how not to foster cooperation. The DA is well aware that various backroom discussions took place between some parties over an extended period from which we were entirely excluded. This was apparently designed to put a gun to our head at the 11th hour and force us into some kind of predetermined outcome. This is bad faith negotiating, and it undermines trust on all sides. By focusing solely on how to best extract positions from the DA or force the DA into a corner, it also meant that there have been no discussions to date about the values, the principles, and the policies that would guide any new multi-party coalition. How exactly do the parties intend to make this coalition work where others have failed? How will we ensure that it results in better service delivery for the people of Johannesburg rather than merely doling out positions to politicians with no clear plan? None of these issues have even been considered or discussed in the lead up to the scheduled election of a new mayor. As things stand, there are no policies, there's no joint program of action, no coalition agreement, and no vision that would guide a new coalition. In the absence of these important elements, a new coalition government would only be formed for the purpose of extracting positions and patronage. And while this may be the aim of some parties, seeking power for their own sake, it is the very antithesis of the DA's commitment to good, clean, accountable, and stable governance. The quest to extract positions even saw some parties trying to bring the Patriotic Alliance on board. This is despite the fact that the PA currently governs with the ANC across the country, including in Johannesburg itself. The DA has made it clear that any coalition to unseat the ANC cannot simultaneously include parties who are currently in governing relationships with the ANC. Our position was proven correct when the Patriotic Alliance held a press conference alongside the ANC just one day after wanting to re-enter the multi-party coalition. In the absence of any substantive agreement or even negotiation, the DA always reverts to first principles. And that is why we have put forward Dr. Mpho as our mayoral candidate, a position she also occupied under the previous coalition arrangement. Given the reality that there are currently no agreements or coalitions, or a document to guide a new coalition, I urge parties currently jostling for positions to support Dr. Palatse. As a DA's candidate, Dr. Palatse represents the biggest and most stable party in the opposition bloc, and she is a proven candidate, having served as mayor before. I also have no doubt that she would give us the best chance of salvaging the unfortunate situation that has resulted from bad faith negotiations. The backroom maneuvering and the willingness to sell out to ANC-aligned parties in pursuit of positions, the focus on patronage over policy, and the lack of any considered governance agreement, as well as the deliberate engineering of a last-minute scramble for positions, are the ingredients that doom coalitions to failure. It is time now for a new way, and it's time for us to move coalitions forward. The Moonshot Pact is the antidote we need to fix coalitions in South Africa. While Johannesburg serves as a sad illustration of how not to form a coalition government, a successful national convention for the Moonshot Pact can address all of the underlying causes of coalition instability. The situation in Johannesburg confirms that it has never been more urgent for the leaders of political parties, rather than agents and proxies pushing their own agendas, to get around one table and agree on the way forward. While no decisions emanating from such a convention have been predetermined, the DA fundamentally believes that good faith negotiations between the leaders of all parties, excluding the EFF and the ANC, as well as their proxies and partners, can provide a stable platform for cooperation. This platform will be vital to defeating the ANC, keeping the EFF out, and building a new government that can bring hope and prosperity to our country in 2024. But it can also provide a solid foundation to address the instability in Johannesburg. It is thus vital that the National Convention for the Moonshot Pact takes place as soon as possible. Instead of backroom dealing between agents and proxies, a national convention would bring together the leaders of all parties that are committed to defeating the ANC and EFF and forming and building a new majority. It will bring them together in one room where we can openly engage on all matters. Instead of focusing only on positions and patronage, such a convention will be guided by discussions of policy and substance, hopefully resulting in a joint declaration that clearly outlines the minimum program of action that would guide any pact government. Instead of forming governments with no binding agreements, the National Convention would create a platform where party leaders publicly pledge themselves and their parties to the program of the pact, so that voters can know clearly which parties are part of the solution and which are part of the problem. Instead of an unseemly last-minute scramble for positions, the convention would take place about 1 year before the 2024 national election, enabling parties to agree on the principles that will guide the formation of a pact government. In all of these ways, a national convention between opposition party leaders can begin to provide an antidote to exactly the type of instability and dishonesty we are witnessing in Johannesburg. The DA is completely committed to this process, and we will be doing everything in our power to get around the table with our partners so we can stop the bickering and instability and finally map out a new way forward that can save South Africa. Thank you very much.